Hey there, Skullheads. I'm Snags.
And I'm Ol Silky.
And we're back on the attack after that Christmas break there.
Yeah, this is our first episode for the year, episode 85.
Yeah, and since it's a new year, you might as well go check out snagsandsilky.com and buy everything and listen to everything. And,
just let's get cracking. Christmas is right around the corner.
Yeah, next year's Christmas is just just less than a year away now. You got to buy those presents.
Less than a year away.
Yep. Click every link, just spend hours on there. We know you got nothing else to do.
So. Yeah. And even if you're not going to buy anything, hit play and walk away. You don't have to actually listen to any of these shows, but we could use the clicks.
And just post the website all over the internet.
Yes.
We're too lazy to do any marketing of our own, so you might as well do it for us.
Realistically, there's been a lot of work put into the website as far as links to check out playlists that correspond to different shows, Amazon, books and movies. Check that shit out.
Plus the link to the most hilarious Kindle book ever written, which is a script that we co-wrote back in the day. That is Sink or Swim. That's on there. You gotta check this shit out, folks. You can't just be shallow fans who just revel in our brilliant podcasts every week, and that's it.
That is based on a true story.
What, Sink or Swim? Yeah, it is based. It's a little slightly exaggerated, but
people always jump on something that's based on a true story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I always thought about getting a tattoo based on a true story, and they could just, jump right on it.
Oh, and he motioned across his upper lip when he said that, so he's going to have that tattoo. I always wanted to have the Fog Hat logo tattooed on my forehead. I just thought that'd be awesome.
True. Just the other day at work, Fog Hat was on Home in My Hand.
Killer fucking jam. God damn, those first handful of albums are just awesome. Nobody fucking takes you seriously either. You got to check out the early Fog Hat, and they just start laughing. They're like, yeah.
No, it's on randomly down in baggage, and somebody's like, dude, this is rocking. I'm like, it's the only hat I wear.
Hell yeah. That's all you got to say.
Somebody went, this is Fog Hat. I go, you're damn right it's Fog Hat.
Fucking A.
But I like that I was able to get that in. This is the only hat I wear.
That's great.
Yeah. So.
All right. So I just wanted to remind you to tell the story about your attempt to buy concert tickets this week.
Oh, yeah. So there's down here in the bottom of the country,
shit flows downhill.
Yes. The drummer
downstream.
The drummer for Metal Church owns a bar down here, Stet's Bar. It was set in the Winkler House, which is kind of historic, and then that was a bar forever.
Was that the home of the legendary Henry Winkler, who played the Fonz?
Possibly.
I doubt it.
But anyway, so it's a small bar in the front. Nothing's changed. You can still kind of see what the house looked like. And then Stet has built a huge stage, very, very reminiscent of the Masquerade.
In Atlanta. Yeah,
great
bar in Atlanta.
Looked. Yeah. The kind of stage like that. Separate behind, they added a garage to the back of the place. And he gets some pretty impressive bands through there that have a following. It's where I was when I met the drummer for Godsmack, Shannon Larkin.
There you go.
And some other, there were a few people came through there that I met them all there. But anyway, so I go there because Grin Cynic, who did our show, Grin Cynic is going to be playing the 11th this Saturday. And so I wanted to go catch Grin Cynic, and they're opening right before Enough's Enough,
which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, Enough's Enough.
Cheese metal band from the 80s, led by, isn't it Chip Zenough is the main guy?
Yeah, I think 92 or I don't know. If
it was one of those hair metal bands that came out at the very end, right before it all went to hell.
Yeah. And they, but they're doing an all Beatles benefit for probably for children, you know.
If it's for the children, then we can't laugh at them. Yeah, no more laughing at Enough's Enough now. Yeah, this is serious.
Yeah, it's for the children,
right?
Snags. So. Anyway, I go, I'm on my way home. I swing by there after work and breeze in there. I'd called ahead like a responsible adult. Hey, I want to buy these tickets. Where can I get them? Oh, come here. And we've got them in the register. We'll just ring you up at the register. Okay. So I get there and I walk in and there's people sitting at the bar drinking and the woman, the bartender's standing there. And I'm like, hey, I need to buy that, Grin Cynic Enough's Enough ticket. And she goes, oh, well, and she's trying to mess with the register again and nothing's working. I'm like, what's going on? And she says, well, we had a rabbit. Somebody came in with a rabbit and the rabbit chewed through the cord. So we can't get the register open to get these tickets. And I'm like, and then true to form, we got a guy on the way with a Cat 3 cable. We're going to try and as she's telling me this, the guy comes in. So I'm going to hang out, maybe get my ticket. And this rabbit's nowhere to be seen. Then, of course, I'm in uniform, so I got some guy talking to me. Oh, my brother's cousin's nephew's next door neighbor used to know somebody that was the head of the FBI. Just this whole random.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Ol Silky here works for a government agency and has to wear a uniform. I don't know if I'm allowed to disclose anything else.
I don't either, so I'm not going to.
Right.
But so now I got Travis Bickle standing there telling me. And I'm just like, here we go. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. Just like, can you get the register? Fine. After about 20 minutes, I'm like, okay, I guess I'll come by tomorrow. But I had to tell Snags that story.
That is, and when he told me that story, I was like, dude, that's like, because sometimes one of us will wake up in the morning after some bizarre dream and text the other, hey man. Like one time I was like, I had a dream I saw Kiss in Piedmont Park, except Gene Simmons left and was replaced by some guy named Trey. Just bizarre shit. That sounds like one of those dreams that you would text me about in the morning.
Yeah.
I was trying to buy concert tickets and a rabbit chewed through the cash register. They only had the tickets in the cash register and they couldn't get it open because a rabbit chewed through the Cat 5. It's just insane.
Absurd, man.
The title of that story is Florida Man Tries to Buy Concert Tickets.
Yeah. Rabbit crashes dreams, something.
Florida Man's got to be in there somewhere, though.
Yeah. I was able to get the tickets the next day.
Oh, thank God.
Without
dude, I was dying of suspense there.
Yeah, so I didn't want to leave anybody hanging. But
no. Hey, I got before we jump into our thing, I've got a what you would call a now we know that tidbit.
Okay, sure.
I just thought it was interesting enough to share because we got a bunch of music lovers on the podcast. But we all know there were two bands in rock history called the Heartbreakers.
Yes.
One was Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and the other was Johnny Thunders of the New York Dolls band he started with Richard Hell who quickly left, but they kept going, called the Heartbreakers, the punk band, the Heartbreakers.
Yep.
And I always thought that was an interesting coincidence. Well, I'm reading this book right now. It's by Chris France from the Talking Heads, just about the history of the Talking Heads, but there's a ton of just punk rock history because they were at ground zero, CBGB's 1974 when all that shit was going down. And he shared a little tidbit in there. Apparently,
that alone would be worth reading. That book.
It's a great fucking book, dude. Yeah. Apparently, Johnny Thunders on his last tour with the New York Dolls is touring through Florida and sees a flyer on a telephone pole for a local band called Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And he's already thinking of starting his own solo band. He's like, oh, these guys will never get anywhere. I'm going to steal their fucking name.
That's funny.
And that's why both bands were called the Heartbreakers. So anyways.
So he saw that in Florida. So
before they were anywhere.
Yeah, this has to be right after they changed the name from Mud.
Yeah, I think Mudcrutch was actually a different band because there was a Mudcrutch reunion.
Well, yeah,
later
no.
On.
So the story I got on Tom Petty is they were Mudcrutch, and then I guess they changed to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and then they got the call from a label that I forget who was on it. The guy with the long white beard,
Dr. John
piano.
Dr. John?
No, the other one. I'm Up on the High Wire.
I don't know, Al Cooper.
No, it's gonna bother me. I can't think of his name. Leon Russell.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter.
Leon Russell.
Folks, someday we're gonna get to album disasters. Leon Russell. Yeah, there you go. Right?
No, so Petty got the call to be on that label, and the whole band fit into two cars.
Right.
And bizarrely, everyone in car B eventually left the band, and everyone in car A from that very first drive across
trip stayed in the band.
Stayed in the band.
So the Mudcrutch reunion was with the guys from car B, I guess. Yeah.
Basic. Yeah. I'm 80-90% sure.
Yeah, they actually did an album, I think, in the 2000s.
They did too, I think.
Really?
They're actually pretty good.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Now we know that. Let's go. Yeah. Let's jump into our subject here.
Now we know that segment. So I read this Rolling Stones article. Well, I never read Rolling Stone. And
not anymore. It's just garbage.
No, just a horrible rag. But Rolling Stone put out this list of horrible albums by brilliant artists. And, you run down this massive list and, Snags and I both like good music.
Right.
And it's funny that you go down that list and they'll stop on somebody and you're like, well, they don't make good music. So
right. Madonna didn't do any good albums.
Is just as bad as all the other, but so the thing that we're going to touch on tonight are bands that have been together for a set amount of time, and drugs and ego and the road takes its toll.
Yeah.
And you can see a pattern of 5 or 6 really good albums, and then it just starts to go to shit.
Right. And in a lot of cases, a few of these bands recovered quite nicely afterwards. So it wasn't always the beginning of the end, but it was definitely a nadir in their creativity. And we've actually, when we started this podcast a couple of years ago, we made a giant list of topics to cover. And there's still a lot of stuff on that list we haven't gotten to, but this was on there almost from the beginning. Just shitty albums. Probably spurred on by our favorite shitty album, The Elder, which will definitely be covered tonight. But we got a handful of them by bands that we like, or artists that we like that we're going to go into a bit of detail tonight.
Now, some of these albums, even the ones that we don't talk about tonight, some of them were so bad they broke the band up, which is just awful to think about that in a creative thing. But there's also bands who they're at their worst to each other and drugs and everything else. They still put out an amazing album, Van Halen, 1984. The Beatles, Let It Be. Let It Be damn near broke the band.
Yeah, I mean, it was not their last album, as we discussed in the Beatles episode. But
and they go on to make Abbey
Road.
Got
released.
What the fuck?
It got released as their last album because it wasn't considered good enough at first, and it's a fucking brilliant album. Let It Be is one of my favorite fucking Beatles albums. It's more brilliant than 99% of everything anybody else has released, and they didn't think it was good enough to release. They did get Phil Spector to touch it up before they released it, but the raw naked version is great too. It's just really good. So that will not be on our list tonight. No Beatles album. If we were going to do a Beatles album, it would probably be Magical Mystery Tour, but even that is still better than most of.
Oh yeah,
we can't call that a disaster, really. That's just kind of a bump in the road. So we won't cover that tonight.
But it's just interesting that, some of these bands were that good that at their worst, they were still able to fool the masses and still turn in a top shelf record.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's get started.
Number one on the list is
Her Satanic Majesty's Request
by the Rolling Stones.
Yes.
I remember the first time I heard this album. Have we mentioned that we're big Kiss fans? I don't know if we've ever mentioned that. Anyways,
probably.
Yeah, one of my favorite albums on Dynasty. One of my favorite songs on Dynasty. My two favorite songs are the Ace songs, Hard Times and 2000 Man.
Yeah.
And I find out, I'm a kid when I first bought Dynasty. Eventually I find out that's a cover of a Rolling Stones song. So naturally I had to go buy the album that had the original 2000 Man on it.
Oh, wow.
Which is a little bit janglier. It's not as tight and rocking as the Kiss version. And then the rest of the album is just fucking tripping people making noises in the studio.
Yeah, what you're referring to is that Why Don't We Sing This All Together, which is like 10 minutes of just and if you listen to it from Keith's point of view, there's a lot of really good acoustic guitar in there.
What, that album?
Yeah, throughout that album.
Yeah,
but it's so as brilliant as Sgt. Pepper's is how bad Satanic Majesty's Request.
Yeah, so basically the Beatles release, and there was always this kind of pseudo competition between the Stones and the Beatles. We all know the Beatles artistically and from a songwriting perspective were superior to the Stones, but the Stones were superior to 99% of everybody else. So it was a competition between the top 1% and 2% basically. But they were always watching what each other were doing. Let It Bleed was released before Let It Be, but the Stones knew about Let It Be, which was an album that was on the shelf, and so they copied the name. It was kind of probably mocking the name.
Yeah, they were taking the piss for sure.
Yeah, and so Sgt. Pepper comes out and just blows everybody's fucking mind. There was somebody basically after the album before Sgt. Pepper, basically some music critic said, well, that's it. What else could they do? They've done everything at this point. And then they drop Sgt. Pepper, blows everybody's mind. Yeah. And a slew of bands tried to copy Sgt. Pepper. 12 Dreams of Dr. Sardonicus by Spirit. I mean, there's all kinds of albums out there.
Graphic did some.
Yeah, we're gonna do a psychedelic opus. The whole psychedelic genre exploded. Pink Floyd was pushing this stuff a little bit before, but it really just kicked the door down for that genre. And then so the Stones were like, we got to do our psychedelic album. And I don't know, man. I sing this all together. Yeah, they got the short version at the beginning of side one, the long version at the end of side one,
Yeah.
and then
Comper,
yeah,
Citadel, just
even
awful.
she's a rainbow. I guess is all right.
Well,
Two,
she's Rainbow's decent. 2000 Man is good.
yeah,
Uh,
2,000 light years from
they
home is
even
all
let
right.
Bill Wyman sing a song where he's snoring on it. It's just
Yeah,
awful.
it's basically it's not the Stones, right? The
Yeah.
Stones the Stones are great pop and blues rock songwriters. They're not great psychedelic explorers. They're not
No, and
Hawkwind. They're
I
not
think
Pink Floyd. They're not the
I think
Beatles.
with this album though, pre-Satanic, they were like the Who or even the Beatles, just a hit machine.
Right.
60s blues covers and just having a rave up like the Yardbirds. And
Right.
then they do Satanic Majesties, and Keith goes to Mick and says, right, that's it. We're gonna do a fucking blues based. We're a
Yeah.
blues band,
And then they
and
go into the most
the
creative
next
period in the history of
yeah,
the band
the
and
next
just
5 albums are
yeah.
goddamn
Right, right.
untouchable.
Yeah, yeah. And here's how I would describe the difference between Sergeant Pepper and her Satanic Majesty's Request. Sergeant Pepper is influenced by LSD. Her Satanic Majesty's Request was recorded while the musicians were on LSD.
Mm,
See the difference?
yeah, and
When you're on LSD, everything seems brilliant. You know they
yeah,
were fucking just tripping balls and making noise in the studio and
that
telling themselves it was
and
brilliant.
their own fucking egos.
Yeah.
We're brilliant. We don't have to write anything. Let's just create. Let's
Oh
be in
yeah.
the moment,
Yeah, let's
and
just take a bunch of
it'll
drugs and
be
get out some acoustic guitars and
it'll be
strum.
groovy,
Yeah, why don't
and
you can you bang that jar in the background? Right, mate,
yeah.
that's brilliant.
Anytime, but and that's the thing. Anytime you don't prepare and you just we'll just create in the moment.
Yeah.
You're shitting on yourself.
Yeah, it'll be brilliant.
Uh,
Yeah, go
yeah.
back and listen to our Rancid episode. It's kind of like that,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Yeah. Um, so anyway, so that's Satanic Majesties. Um,
Yeah. And
I grew that was one of the albums my mom had.
oh really?
Oh yeah, I would. We didn't have a TV, so I would sit and just pour through her record collection,
Right.
and so she had all this shit, and you would open the album. There was like a maze you could draw in. There was just a whole, not like a word search, but it was like a maze, and you had to get into the center of the garden where the stones were, and it was. You'll see they recreate that in some of the CD booklets, but
Oh, nice. I remember
yeah,
CDs.
yeah.
Let me know when they
Uh,
recreate it on Spotify. The funny thing is, I've got these young coworkers
uh-huh.
that are like, oh, they're trying to impress me because they know I'm a music cat. It's like, dude,
Mm-hmm.
man, yeah, I just picked up such and such on vinyl, and I know you're not going to be sympathetic to this, but I'm like, really? How much did you spend? I spent $30. I got Back in Black on vinyl. I'm like, dude, when vinyl went away, we were all happy because you don't have to hear snap, crackle, pop along with the song anymore. You just had this clear sound on
No, but if you've
CDs.
got a good stereo, vinyl just sounds so good. But
Nah,
it's cumbersome to try to keep up with
it's
a
a pain
massive.
in, and
Uh,
it makes fucking snap, crackle, pop noises. If I want, I'll eat a bowl of Rice Krispies listening to Spotify, and then it sounds just like vinyl.
mhm.
Anyways,
Anyway,
and I'll be like, dude, that was $30 you could have spent on a bottle of bourbon. What are you doing?
well, I enjoy that younger kids are buying older music, so
They should just be smart and listen to it on Spotify.
they should buy AC/DC every chance they get.
All right. Anyways, so the next album we got here is, and we're kind of doing this in chronological order, like the year these things were released, but 1972, Creedence Clearwater Revival releases an album called Mardi Gras. And this is basically preceded by them releasing a handful of albums that are fucking brilliant. Some of the best songwriting of the era.
Mm-hmm.
And the songwriting is being done by John Fogerty. And Tom Fogerty, his brother, and the other two cats in the band, Stu Cook and Doug Clifford, are basically getting restless and irritated because John Fogerty is hogging all the songwriting duties. And they're like, man, we want more creative input, man. And Tom Fogerty actually quits the band. And so John Fogerty just has had enough, and Stu Cook and Doug Clifford and him decide they're going to do another album as a trio. And John's like, right, I'm going to write 3 songs for this album, and that's it.
And those songs are great.
Yeah,
those songs are really good.
Yeah, and he's like, you guys are going to write and sing the rest of the album. Since you're, that's what you want, then we're going to do it. And then they're kind of like deer in the headlights, like, oh shit, now we got to come up with stuff. And they didn't. If you listen to the album, I mean, it's just a lot of mediocre fucking rambling. It's not like sloppy rambling like the Stones album was, but it's just mediocre songwriting, basically.
I don't think it's that bad, where they say it's the worst album ever made. Compared to other music from 72, it's fine.
But however, if you compare
these songs stand out like those should have been on their own album.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if you compare it to the previous albums, it's a serious drop in quality. Exactly. So you're comparing it to the previous CCR albums,
Yeah, it's definitely what the hell is going on here. And that's why Ringo sings one song.
Right. Yeah. You don't have, and the Beatles, you had 2 brilliant songwriters. This band, you had 1, right?
Yeah.
And so, it'd be like if Paul quit and even fucking George Harrison and even Ringo Starr, they're better songwriters
good tunes
than these guys. I know.
Ringo went on as a solo artist. People thought he would fade away really quick.
Yeah,
he was actually very
it's hard.
prolific.
We're doing a podcast about bad albums. It's hard to stay on the subject and not talk about brilliant people like the Beatles because these albums. But prepping for this podcast, I went back and listened to that album again, and it's just fucking forgettable.
Yeah, it is. But Looking for a Reason, I thought was decent. But then You Don't Have Anything Till Someday Never Comes. Great song. And then Hello, Mary Lou is a cover. The Ozzie and Harriet kid, Ricky Nelson. And then Sweet Hitchhiker is a great Creedence song, but that's Fogerty,
Yeah. And as you kind of alluded to, Rolling Stone called it the worst album they have ever heard from a major rock band. So, it's probably not the worst album, but at the time, that's how shocked people were at the quality drop off.
Yeah.
And then,
and that broke the band up.
Yeah. Well, it comes out, everybody trashes it, and Fogerty says, right, I told you so. Fuck off. And quit and breaks the band up.
Yeah. Like our Roger Corman episode. But
that was a good episode, dude.
Anyway, so that's
and
Mardi
you
Gras.
Spent the next 2 months binging Roger Corman movies.
Yeah, because what I was gonna do was we talked about it. I don't want to be shallow and not. I need to find out.
Texting me and Mike and raving about these Roger Corman. This is a great Roger Corman.
They were, and I'll stand by it. Those were great. Yeah. He lost focus in the 80s.
Anyways, go back and listen to our awesome Roger Corman episode. So, so the next, you want to introduce the next album?
The Doors.
Yeah.
After Jim passes away, they managed to do 2 more albums. Other Voices and Full Circle.
I remember I was a Doors fan, and this is back in the days before the internet, kids. So you didn't automatically know all this shit. There was no Wikipedia, but
No.
I was a hardcore Doors fan, from like the age 16 to age 18, had long hair, had that necklace that Jim Morrison wears on No One Here Gets Out Alive, just obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know when I found out they recorded these other two albums after Jim died. It might have been in my early 20s. I have a vague memory of being in a used record store and running across this album called Other Voices that only has the three cats minus Jim on the cover, and going, what the fuck is this?
Right. Same experience.
Yeah.
Kind
of. I think it was fucking what was that record store on next to Garden Hill Cinema on Peachtree?
Fantasyland?
Yeah, I think it was Fantasyland.
Mm-hmm.
But when did you first? Is that basically the same kind of thing for you?
As you know, my walls were covered in Doors posters. Obsessed with No One Here Gets Out Alive, the book, and the Doors. For me, the Doors' first three albums are just like all the hits. You've heard it a billion times. It's like a damn Tom Petty greatest hits record. You just like, here we've heard this.
Right.
So I think my favorite are the last three: Soft Parade, Morrison Hotel.
I would agree.
Burned down. Morrison Hotel, and LA Woman is just amazing.
Yeah, that's their masterpiece. So much fucking spirit in that album.
It's just they were again another blues band. They really did that well. So when I came across Other Voices, I only knew of it. It was out of print forever.
Yeah.
And
you couldn't get it.
I didn't really go to any record.
That one and Full Circle were both out of print.
And I didn't go into any record stores that had that. So way down, through the decades, knowing of the records, I had not heard them. And through the Doors original website, they put both albums on one CD, which I was able to order directly. And I was so excited. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to finally hear these albums. And Ray's got a decent voice sometimes. Robbie Krieger did write a lot of Doors songs.
Yeah, they share a lead.
Popular belief, but
Robbie he wrote a lot of the Doors songs, including the lyrics. But him and Ray basically share vocal duties on these albums.
Yeah, and like Tightrope Ride is decent. I think it was a Red Mosquito, something like that.
Yeah, it's just called Mosquito. Yeah, that's on Full Circle. Yeah.
Yeah. They really lacked. It's almost these albums. I got a great analogy. Season 5 of Saturday Night Live. John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd are gone.
Yeah, Belushi was a force.
There's just a huge hole.
Yeah,
in that hole, and people are like, oh wow, and there's actually some skits where that would have been John Belushi doing that, and it's so it's missing something.
It's missing is passion, and because one, and I remember you told me this one time. And I think it was when I was recording my just my little one-man band stuff a few years ago. I was kind of went through a phase where I was messing around with that, and expressing some doubts about my singing, and you were like, dude, it doesn't matter how good of a singer you are as long as you sing it with conviction. And Jim Morrison was actually a pretty good baritone, Frank
He's a good
Sinatra,
crooner.
Elvis style singer.
Yeah.
Um, better than David Lee Roth, not as good as Frank Sinatra, right? But somewhere in that range. And but he sang with conviction, dude, on every fucking song.
There's no wasted tune.
No, he was there.
Yeah.
And he was a force. And yes, Robbie Krieger wrote some of their commercial hits like Hello, I Love You and Light My Fire, but the songs that Morrison wrote, the haunting Horse Latitudes and The End and Break On Through and all these amazing lyrics, those are noticeably missing on these two albums.
Yeah, Crystal Ship. Oh my god.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just felt so I like that I have them.
Yeah.
Much like the Clash album, and we'll talk about that one. I like having it with the other things. It's something that they made,
I as someone who doesn't do physical albums anymore, I have them on my. I think I have. You know what I have? I have a separate Doors playlist. It's rarities, and it's got American Prayer and which is the posthumous recordings of Jim Morrison doing his poetry, and the Doors are noodling around making music in the background. Yeah. And then some bootlegs of them playing live, doing covers that aren't on the studio albums. And then these two albums, it's like a Doors bootlegs and rarities playlist that I have these on. That they don't deserve to be on the same playlist as the Doors Up Through LA Woman. That's a fucking whole different ballgame.
It's a solid thing.
Yeah.
American Prayer is actually a birthday present that the Doors bought studio time for Jim to go and just record his poems.
That's cool.
And Jim was like moved damn near to tears that they would do that for him. And he really took it seriously. And I think within 5-6 months was dead. And then
I guess it was like 1976 when they decided to get together and put some noodling music behind it.
I don't know how I feel about it. I have it. I've listened to it. I know
it's a poetry album with some noodling behind it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't listen to it on the regular, but
no.
Yeah.
So so that's the Doors. Other Voices in Full Circle. Trippy album covers, but just not quite.
They should have called the band something different. The Windows, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Lock the Door. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Backdoor. There was a tribute band called the Backdoors back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I saw them somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, so here it is. We finally discussed this album in detail.
Music from the Elder.
There is a book that's just too pricey, or I would have got it, and it's all about the Elder.
I have the Kindle. Of that. I actually
read it.
Forgot that I have it. I read. It's a long ass book. It's like 400 pages on the Elder.
Yeah.
I read like 60% of it. I should go back and finish it, but it tells the whole story. They started recording, I think, at Ace's studio in Connecticut, and had Bob Ezrin producing. And after Dynasty and Unmasked, the plan was to go back and just do a rock and roll album, straight up rock and roll.
And that's what Ace was looking forward to.
And that's what Ace was looking forward to. And they started recording, and they're doing demos of these rock songs. I think Down on Your Knees from Kiss Killers compilation is from that era. And there was a version of Dark Light that was called something else. I forget what it was called. It was some less poetic lyrics. And there was a song, I think, called Rockin' with the Boys. I think that might have been the title that was going to be the title of the album.
So Ace has gone back and done that song.
Yeah, that's from that. That is from that's the song that was gonna be like the title track of that album. And they're demoing all this stuff up, getting it ready, and Bob Ezrin fucking coasts in.
You know, when you look at how dead 1981 was, Zeppelin was over,
right?
Bon Scott was gone. You know, this was the time to strike with a ripping ass. Punk was on its way out.
Yeah, fucking drop another rock and roll over, you know.
God damn, man.
And so Bob Ezrin coasts in and starts taking over the recording sessions. And you know, Ace's grasp on everything is starting to go away. Bob is cozying up to Gene and
Bob who killed the Alice Cooper band. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, he also created the Alice Cooper, the classic sound. He helped create it. So
for him, the cocksucker. Go ahead.
Go back and listen to our Alice Cooper episode. It's one of the best episodes we've done. That fucking Alice Cooper group era was awesome. But anyways, Bob is, you know, when he's good, he's great. The Wall, which you like a lot, and classic Alice Cooper stuff, and Strays by Jane's Addiction. I really like that album. That's a good, solid album. But anyways, he takes over, and then they move the recording sessions to Canada, out of Ace's studio, and Bob has said in retrospect he was doing a lot of cocaine at the time, and he's fresh off the success of The Wall. The Wall is this huge fucking album, and then it becomes a movie, which was, I think, just released in 81, wasn't it? I mean, the movie version, 81 or 82
in the works, and I swear that came out in 82, but I don't know.
It might be 82, but Bob is engulfed in the whirlwind of this mega success he just orchestrated for Pink with Roger Waters, called The Wall, and coasts into these recording session with Kiss, and he's like, "Oh, you're just gonna do a regular rock and roll album? No, man, concept albums are where it's at." Basically, Gene had some idea for a movie about a hero. Like, oh, that's original, a movie about a hero. Nobody's ever done that before.
Yeah, that's breaking.
And so starts talking to Bob about it, and Bob's like, well, why don't we make this album about that? It'll be like Tommy. It'll be a rock opera. And Ace is just fucking livid. He's like, I thought we were going to go after these two. We did a disco album, which had some good songs on it, and we did a power pop album with no good songs on it. And we were going to go back and do a rock album. Now you guys want to do a fucking art rock opera? What the fuck? Yeah. And basically, Bob Ezrin and Gene take control of the sessions. Paul just goes along with it. Ace is pissed off.
Yeah.
Eric Carr, of course, just whatever. Hey, I'm glad I'm not fixing stoves.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not Bronx anymore. The book you're talking about is called Odyssey.
Yeah, we got a link. We'll link that in the click pit. Yeah. It's worth reading. I haven't gotten all the way through it. I should go back and finish that. It's a close up, slow motion look at a car wreck.
Yeah, basically.
And I remember. So when this album came out, I had just gotten into Kiss 3 years earlier, and in 1978 seemed like a long time ago, especially when you're 12, right? 1978. Seems like a long time ago. That was back in this, and culturally it was like night and day. Sure. 1978 to 1981, things changed overnight. And so it seemed like a long time ago. And it was 1/4 of my life, I guess, when you're 12, 3 years.
Yeah.
So I really ramped up my interest in Kiss right as everybody else was off ramping their interest in Kiss. And so I really wanted this album to be good. And like any friends I had that were into Kiss in 78 had already moved on. You know, they're stoked about Fair Warning or whatever, you know. Yeah. And I was too. I liked all that shit, but I was still hanging on to the Kiss cause. And so when this came out, I remember really, really wanting it to be good. And basically, I would listen to the cassette over and over again and tell myself it was good.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this was their third album in a row that was just garbage.
Yeah. At least Dynasty had Hard Times in 2000, man. Charisma's not bad, but good God. This was just out of left field, man. And I remember Kiss doing interviews in like Hit Parade or trying to justify it and go, well, Detroit Rock City is a concept song. You know, the guy dies at the end. And this is, we're just, it's like, oh God.
I remember Kiss playing on Fridays.
Yeah.
And they came out.
We both watched that live.
Paul's wearing what looks like a Glad trash bag.
Yeah.
And my mother is laughing. She's laughing, and I'm sitting on the floor in front of the TV, and I was, shut up, Mom.
It's good, man. It's really good.
Good. And it was just. And Gene singing World Without Heroes. And managed to eke a tear out.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
It was just fucking terrible. And I actually, this is how much time I had on my hands. I made a greatest hits tape called The Eldesty. And it was songs from The Elder and the songs from Dynasty all on the same cassette. So.
See, that's I made a tape of Heaven and Hell on side A. And side B was when the Misfits got back together and had Peter Gray, not Peter Graves,
American Psycho.
Yeah. Or Hollywood Monster.
It was Peter Graves. It was Peter Graves.
Yeah. Okay. And so it went back, and I just could never get that tape out of my player. It was just around and around.
I think that probably would have sounded better than The Eldest.
Yeah. My last word on The Elder is we rode our bikes to Caldor. Was like a big like mall store, and when you went in, all the store, there was a place called Sounds Music, and you'd go in there and they had picture discs, and all the people that worked there were hot chicks. And I went up to where the records were and saw an end rack with The Elder, and I just couldn't bring myself to take that up to the front because
it was too embarrassing.
It was too embarrassing.
I've got a Elder embarrassing story to tell next.
Next to that was For Those About to Rock.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want both of them. And I only had money for one. And I'm like, I'm buying this fucking AC/DC record.
Yeah.
And, went up, and the chicks just so fucking gory. They were just like stunningly hot.
So naturally, because you brought the AC/DC record up there, you got the blowjob, right? That's how the story ends.
Yeah, I was now in a higher echelon to possibly,
which means nothing unless you actually got the blowjob. Otherwise, it's all in your head.
Yeah, it was all in my head.
Okay, I'm just checking.
Like, I had a chance because I bought the AC.
For sure, yeah. Chance doesn't mean shit.
Had I bought Kiss the Elder, it would have been Smirks and.
Yeah. You would have had, instead of 1 in a million chance of getting a blowjob, you would have had no chance.
Right.
Yeah. So I remember, and this is a much dorkier story than that, but you couldn't, at this time in history, and I've heard other Kiss fans say this, Eddie Trunk has stories about this, but at this time in Kiss history, you couldn't publicly mention that you were a Kiss fan because people hated Kiss. There was an animosity towards Kiss because they were so fucking out of style. And there was one kid, I forget what his last name was, Greenberg, is a classmate of mine in the middle school I was in, who had mentioned he liked Kiss. And we're at school, and I can't say, because we're surrounded by people. Hey man, have you heard the new Elder? Have you heard the new Kiss album? Right? You can't say.
Mm-hmm.
So I just start dropping Elder lyrics into the conversation to see if he picks up on it. Fucking hilarious.
You're not well, Mr. Blackwell.
Yeah, it's just stuff like that. Yeah, it was funny. But the story, there's a great story that Gene and Paul tell. Now that here he comes. Here he comes.
Uh-oh.
What up,
El
bro?
Condor.
Yeah, talk, bro.
Go to the snagsandsilky.com. We got cups. We got mugs. We have action figures.
Posters.
Funko Pops.
Stickers.
Posters.
Mugs.
Stickers.
Explosives.
Mugs.
Everything.
Lego set.
Oh, wow.
Anti-aircraft missiles.
Anti-aircraft missiles. All right, there he goes.
All right. Our sales.
Iron Man suit as well.
Okay. Wash behind your ears.
Our spokesperson has spoken.
Yes.
So there, Gene and Paul very quickly realized they'd made a horrific mistake, thus following up with Creatures of the Night, Lick It Up, and all that. But they tell a story about when they're at the record listening conference. Basically, the execs at Polygram, I think that was their label at the time, want to know about this brilliant record they've been recording with Bob Ezrin, and they finally bring the tapes in, and a bunch of executives are sitting around a table, and Gene and Paul are just so proud they recorded this art rock album that proves how smart they are, and the critics are finally going to like Kiss, because they're going to be up there with Genesis and Yes and all these art rock bands.
They wanted this whatever, and like, dude, you've got Rolls Royces and whores.
I know, and groupies and fans all over the world and money. What's your problem? And so they're in the conference room and they start playing the album, and they're just beaming with pride, and I am just a boy.
Yeah,
too
horrible.
young to be seen, or whatever. and the look on the executives' faces.
Oh, I'd have laughed my ass off.
Yeah, I think Paul tells the story in his autobiography. So does Gene, but it's just like they by the end of a few songs in, they're starting to get sick to their stomach because these people are like trying not to laugh and smirking.
I would have just been,
and they're like, "Oh my god!" They were living in this little cocaine-fueled bubble with Paul Ezrin for a few months, recording this, thinking it was brilliant. And that was their first dose of cold water. And the label basically said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to rearrange the song orders, put the guitar-heavy stuff at the beginning, end of the album. We're going to crank up the levels on the guitars, and we're going to hope for the best. Hope for the best. And so, horrible. Oh, and we can't finish this segment without talking about the play we went to see in Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you start that story?
So Snags calls me one morning. Hey, dude. We got a road trip up to Nashville.
This is in the late 90s.
Yeah, and it's the Elder as a high school musical, and I told him to go pound sand, and he's like, "Come on, man, you're the only person I can get to go see. We have to see this, man." And I just. Sometimes you just got to go for the adventure of it.
Yeah, it was basically some high school it was actually a town called Athens, Ohio. They had a musical director who was a Kiss fan, and they put together a musical based on The Elder, and they were touring it, and they brought it to Nashville, Tennessee, and we actually went to our local record store, which is what you had to do back then to buy tickets. And then we drove. We drove the 4 hours up there, and we go see this thing. And it's a bunch of kids in Kiss makeup singing the songs from The Elder, and they have a live band playing the music. The only recorded part was Ace's solo in the middle of Dark Light, because that's a blistering fucking solo, and I guess their guitarist couldn't do it. But
and they had like a mountain. The kids jumped off. I mean, they had quite a stage
Well,
setup.
the quest to serve Morpheus or whatever the fucking a storyline is in that thing,
Right.
they were acting it all out, and it was
Just
it was yeah, we were laughing the whole way through it. We're just like, oh my god,
and
this is
they even
crazy.
called us out that we had driven the furthest, and
Oh, did they?
yeah, and I'm just like, good God, I just want to be anonymous at this thing, and now we look like,
It was funny. We're the dorks who drove all the way from Atlanta to see a live production of The Elder. Probably the only live production of The Elder that's ever been done. But
probably, and thank God for that.
Yeah. All right. So the next album we're covering is Cut the Crap, which is Joe Strummer's first solo album, accidentally mislabeled as a Clash album. The stage was basically set for this album in there. Basically, everybody knows who Malcolm McLaren is, right? He was the guy who basically put together the Sex Pistols. Steve Jones and is it Tom? I forget what the drummer's name for this Sex Pistols is. Glenn Matlock was on bass, and then the drummer, drawing a blank on his name. They were all in a band, heavily influenced by the Faces. Malcolm McLaren visits the New York scene I was talking about earlier in the podcast, CBGBs and all that. He's fascinated by this cat named Richard Hell, who basically created the classic punk look of the ripped up jeans and the spiky hair. That was Richard Hell. He created that, and the fucked up names and all that.
You're talking about Paul Cook?
Yeah, was the drummer. And so Malcolm McLaren sees Richard Hell in New York and gets inspired by the whole punk scene, but specifically Richard Hell's look. He goes back, gets this band that's doing Faces covers, and says, we gotta get a punk rock lead singer. You guys are going to be a punk band. He had a boutique that sold punk clothes. He started ramping that up, and they actually asked Richard Hell to come front the Sex Pistols, and he was going to, but he had passport troubles or something. He couldn't get over there. So they grab this guy named John Lydon, and they give him a Richard Hell-like name, Johnny Rotten, and they spike up his hair, and bam, you got the Sex Pistols. Well, there was this guy named Bernie Rhodes, wanted to put his own band together, and he starts assembling the Clash. They were formed in a very similar way to the Sex Pistols, and somewhere along the way, Bernie Rhodes falls out of favor with the band. They get rid of him for a while. The main person who didn't get along with Bernie Rhodes was Mick Jones. He's the Paul McCartney to Joe Strummer's John Lennon in the Clash. You can't have the Clash without those two singer-songwriters. They complement each other. There
was such angst.
They were so good. And so I think it was without Bernie Rhodes that they recorded Sandinista, and things just started kind of getting unfocused. And so they bring Bernie Rhodes back, and much to the hesitation of Mick Jones, and the tension between Mick Jones and Bernie Rhodes just picks right back up. Bernie Rhodes is, really trying to influence their sound. They did a great album when they kind of got back together with him in Rock, drawing a blank on it, with Rock the Casbah fucking album.
London Calling.
No, God, now we sound like idiots. London Calling does not have Rock the Casbah on it. Hold on a second.
Oh, then that's the other one I like.
We know the fucking Clash. Go back and listen to our Clash episode. This is fucking embarrassing. We're just gonna pause.
Really? I mean, just talk about this
Combat Rock. Okay, they do a good album with Combat Rock, which we all knew the title to. We just fucking temporarily had a brain fart there. And after Bernie Rhodes comes back, and then he's trying to influence their sound to sound even more modern. Let's incorporate drum machines. And Mick Jones just basically had enough. He's like, fuck this. And he was also a stoner. He was always late to rehearsals and stuff. and and Joe Strummer and Paul Simonon decide they're going to kick him out. He's got a bad attitude. He's late for rehearsals. He's not getting along with Bernie Rhodes. And they kick Mick Jones out of the Clash. And Bernie Rhodes just scoops right in there and, never mind, mate, I'll co-write songs with you. And this entire album is co-written by Bernie Rhodes and Joe Strummer. Every fucking song.
Mm-hmm.
And you get basically what you get is, and Joe Strummer has said this, is that Mick Jones, what he brought to the band, even though he's late all the time, was a talent for arranging songs. So even if Joe Strummer brings a song in that's complete, Mick Jones would help him arrange it so it really fucking punch it up, really sounds good. And
he just breathed life into it, and that was the Clash. So in a way, that was part of the ingredients to all those amazing records.
Yeah, that creative tension. And what you have here is a bunch of songs that aren't properly arranged, that you've got drum machines throughout. You've got synthesizers that are too loud. You got the vocals that are mixed down into the kind of instruments, so you can't really hear them as well.
Yeah.
It's badly produced. The songs aren't completely written. And
many of them suck.
The two worst things about 80s music, there are few bands that could rock a synth and a drum machine. You had Devo and God, maybe just Devo. But
it became such a uneasy, let's just put a drum machine in. We don't have to
synthesizers,
and we can just sit back and snort all this coke and and we don't have to actually play on it. And that's what drove us, like our asses were on fire, to the bands that we like to this day.
Yep. Which was thrash, punk rock, new wave of British heavy metal, all the underground shit.
Real somebody sitting on a stage. They don't have to be on fire screaming.
Yeah.
Just somebody on a stage actually playing.
If you imagine yourself as a kid when this comes out and you hear this and then you hear Black Flag, you're gonna go Black Flag all day. This is decadence. Decadence, lazy garbage. Paul Simonon, who helped kick Mick Jones out of the band, doesn't even end up playing on this album. This is the first Joe Strummer solo album, and probably and definitely his worst.
So he really Bob Ezrin'd the whole scene.
Bernie Rhodes Bob Ezrin'd it.
But they have a song on this album called "We Are the Clash," which I always found ironic.
That is ironic. Cut the crap is also an ironic title.
So their lead off single was "This Is England," which is just awful.
The whole thing is awful. I have trouble getting through it, to be honest. It's just really bad.
For some reason, I do like the "Do It Now," which was the Japanese bonus track. Maybe for the rarity of it, I those always appeal to me. Some song that's hard to track down,
right?
But basically, this is just a terrible record.
Yeah. Yep. Anyways, and there it is. That's a terrible record. That's why we're calling this episode "Cut the Crap."
Cut the crap. Here's an example of they put this album out and they're like, oh my god, and they break. That was it.
Yeah, and it was basically Joe Strummer and a bunch of hired jackasses, and one of the hired jackasses, Joe Strummer, was just horrified. It got trashed when they put it out. It's one of those things you put out and then you realize, oh my god, what the fuck was I doing?
And it's a great album cover. It's like corrugated metal and some
punk,
dude with a mohawk who would never listen to this record, but there he is.
Right. And so they were they actually, one of the hired jackasses in the band was saying, well, we could put out a statement saying we disavow the record. And Joe was like, no, this is over.
Yeah.
I'm just not.
So all your Clash box sets, they've got complete Clash. There's a really good Clash box set that looks like a boom box, and it's got
there's
all
not
the
one
records.
song from this album.
It's got all 5 albums, and not
this. Yeah,
not this one.
Because it's not a Clash
Which led me
album.
to track this down, because I'm like, why is this not in here?
Right.
And it's for me, it sounds like music from 1985.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, it sounds like the shit we had to hear on the radio. Except it wasn't good enough to be on the radio.
Yeah. Like I came at it as, well, this sounds like everything else from 1985.
Yeah.
And just shit. And I, not this album specifically, but this is why I didn't really like the Clash for decades, because it just was not what I get it now.
I had to talk you into giving them a chance. Yeah.
And that was a tough one to get, but I like the hell out of those 5 records.
Yeah. And
Sandinista is you have to
Sandinista is, for all of its meandering, it's miles ahead of this. Ahead of this.
Yeah.
And so I told this story on our Clash episode, but basically after this comes out and it's a complete disaster, and Joe Strummer realizes that Mick was right about Bernie Rhodes, he was leading them down a path to musical ruin. Like, Mick Jones did not want to go in this direction.
Yeah.
With
those guys should have patched things up.
Yeah. Well, what he did, and again, this is before the age of the internet and Facebook and cell phones and all that. He basically breaks up that version of the Clash and goes trying to find Mick Jones to talk him into getting the real Clash back together.
Yeah.
And he is told, oh, Mick's on holiday in Jamaica. So he actually gets on a plane, flies to Jamaica, and they had been to Jamaica before, I'm guessing, and he's like hitting all the hotels and the places he thinks Mick's going to be hanging out at.
Yeah.
Spends, I don't know how much time in scouring Jamaica for Mick Jones, never finds him, comes back to England empty-handed, and eventually Mick comes back to England and he tracks him down, and Mick Jones is pissed off about being kicked out of the Clash still, and also probably really happy that album was fucking terrible. And he was like, no, mate, I've moved on. So
that sucks.
Yeah, that's terrible. But it's not as terrible as this next album we're going to talk
about. Dee Dee King.
Dee Dee King, a.k.a. Dee Dee Ramone.
Yeah, this is like a Corey Feldman moment here.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah, this is Corey Feldman territory for sure.
Yeah. Standing in the spotlight.
This is basically Dee Dee Ramone leaves the Ramones. I remember reading some interviews, one of these Ramones books, where when he's about to leave, it might have been the Johnny Ramone biography, but Johnny Ramone, I'm pretty sure it's Johnny's like, yeah, by the time he left, he was really heavily into rap, and he was wearing Adidas tracksuits all the time.
Yeah.
So he basically, which that shows that's the Run DMC influence. They were big on the Adidas. And he leaves the Ramones, and the first album he drops as a solo artist. And you got to realize Dee Dee Ramone was kind of like Robbie Krieger. He wrote a lot of the Ramones songs.
Oh, yeah.
He was a major, even after he left the Ramones, once he got over this rap phase, he was still writing songs for the Ramones when CJ was on bass. So
and Dee Dee would come back to the Ramones and leave again, and
he was a great punk rock songwriter, genius level, I think, which makes this album even more inexplicable. But he basically
I would say Dee Dee is the Angus of the Ramones. He's like almost the face of it. Just that.
Yeah.
Well, Johnny too had that.
Yeah. Johnny is the Malcolm of the Ramones. He's the guy in the background holding it all together. But anyways, he decides, because he's just in this fascinated rap music at the time, he decides he's going to drop a rap album. And it is fucking hilarious.
Well, I'm sure in his mind this was going to be groundbreaking because no one else was really embracing rap like this. I mean, Anthrax had done some crossover stuff.
Right.
But most of your rap artists were legit rap artists. You didn't have
the Beastie Boys were around, but I don't know if he had heard of them or not.
I don't know.
I'd have to check the timeline and see if they had broken out yet or not. But he basically,
well, this came out in '89. Paul's.
Okay. This is way after that. Yeah. So he was probably inspired by License to Ill. White people can rap too. Which these days doesn't seem like, of course they can, but back then when License to Ill dropped, it was the fact that they were white was a big deal.
And this coming out in '89 is a little late to the party.
A little late to be doing this Run DMC style. And it's just cringy. Like you've got to listen. If there's two albums you cats need to listen to after this, and Silky dropped a mega playlist with a bunch of album disasters on it, so you got to check that out. But if you want to start with two, you got to listen to The Elder and Dee Dee Ramone Standing in the Spotlight are the most entertaining, because Kiss trying to do an art rock album or Dee Dee Ramone trying to rap sound equally ridiculous, just completely fucking ridiculous. And the funny thing is he's rapping about lame rappers and about how he's the king of rappers and people tip their hat when he's strutting down the street and
because he calls himself Dee Dee King in this shit, right?
Yeah. He's Dee Dee King is his rap name, and every song is like, and he sounds like an idiot. Like when he sings, he sounds like a snarling badass, but when he raps, he sounds like a dumbass from Queens. Basically, he's like, I'm Dee Dee King, I'm the king of rap. No, I'm not like you sucker MCs that are rapping crap. But he's
like a cartoon character.
He's rapping about lame MCs when he's the lame MC.
Right.
It's really fucking funny. So you got to check it out. There's one good fucking song on here called Poor Little Rich Girl, which is basically a snarling Ramones tune. It's him singing. Could easily have been on a Ramones album.
And Dee Dee wrote some books. I mean, he really did a lot. It sucks that he basically dies on a couch, drug overdose.
Every one of them died too early, whether it was cancer, drugs, or whatever. It's just,
Yeah. I mean, the fact that we're in a time post Lemmy, post Ramones is a sign of everything else.
Particularly of the apocalypse.
Yeah, it's why when you wonder why gas prices are terrible or why people are fighting with each other about who they politically feel aligned with, we're in absolute chaos.
Lemmy, according to prophecy, once Lemmy dies, the world descends.
That's all. It's all
right.
And it really started with Filthy Phil kicking off, and then that was it.
And then Dee Dee and Joey and Johnny, and then Tommy. It's gone. And Marky's still alive. I mean, come on. The wig wearing goofball's the one that's got to still be alive.
Yeah, corn nut. Yeah. I sang in dust. Okay.
Yeah. But CJ Ramone's solo stuff, by the way, is really fucking good. It's
hard to track down. Yeah. I mean,
I
would love to talk to him.
It's on Spotify. And it's solid. It's good. Yeah. That's one of those. hidden discographies like Izzy Stradlin's solo albums
Yeah.
where
and they've both got great singing voices. CJ was a great singer.
Yeah, and his solo shit is fucking solid. It's good.
I gotta check that out.
Ramone style punk rock. It's great.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, there's that Standing in the Spotlight by Dee Dee King. Afterwards, he went back to a kind of a punk rock style and did some solo albums.
Remains. He did the Remains, which was pretty cool.
He did some solo albums, which I haven't heard. I got to go check those because apparently they're more in punk style, so they're probably good.
The Remains was live, them doing Ramones songs.
Cool.
It was very, very cool.
Yeah, he apparently has like 3 studio albums after this, Dee Dee Ramone, that are more punk rock. This one is a mashup of bad rap music, mediocre doo-wop style with a little bit of punk rock elements included, and then one good song, Poor Little Rich Girl, that's just pure punk rock.
When you have the money and the connections, you can decide I'm a rap artist and I'm going to do a rap album. You can decide I'm a pilot and I'm going to just fly a plane and John Denver the living shit out of yourself.
Or write a whole autobiography about flying planes instead of singing an Iron Maiden.
Instead of and that you know, it fucks you up. So,
yeah. So anyways, you want to introduce the next album?
Yeah, so this next one is really tough. So back in the day, my Beatles was Van Halen. And
they were amazing.
When Van Halen broke up in 85, I was devastated. And I remember my dad going, yeah, I remember when the Beatles, and I'm like, oh, this is not the Beatles. It's Van Halen, dude.
This is more important.
This is more important. You know, and then, you know, 5150 comes out and you're like, maybe Dave's on, maybe, you know, because you didn't really have the internet. So you're like, well, it says Van Halen. Maybe, you know, maybe they're.
I knew it was all over Hit Parader and all that.
I know, but I was in denial. I was hoping. Yeah. And you get it home. Now, I did like the Montrose stuff, but you get 5150 home, and it's.
I was lucky enough to hear the songs on the radio first, so I never bought it.
I hadn't heard anything, and I got it, and I sat there like, God, and just like The Elder, you're like, this is good. I liked it, and it was just fucking. To this day, I can't play that dumb.
That album's not even as good as The Elder, because The Elder is at least funny. You know, you can laugh at it.
And I said this earlier. The Elder at least tried for something,
right?
And you know, I think with 5150 is they finally were able to just do a pop album without someone arguing that this is too soft. We're a metal band, or you know.
Yeah, it's like when Mick Jagger does solo albums.
Yeah, let's work.
Yeah. But 5150 is not the disaster album we're covering. It's leading up to it.
No, I'm leading up to. So
yeah.
You know, we get through these 4 god awful Van
Hagar. Yeah.
And you keep hoping maybe they'll figure out that this is just not the path, and they've got to get back.
The massive album sales did not help with that cause, because for all of Van Hagar's that we rag on that band, Sammy has a knack for writing mindless pablum bland pop songs that the brainless masses love.
It was all repetitive. It was right now.
I know, but he cued in. It was a totally different audience from Van Halen. As Joe Rogan said, it was music for drunk fat chicks.
Yes,
and so there's this whole different audience. The mindless drunk girl who listens to Britney Spears is also going to listen to Van Hagar.
Nice sweater music, because I don't need a nice sweater. I want to fucking rock.
He tapped into that, and they sold millions of albums. So at least they had that. They couldn't rock anymore because their balls were cut off.
Yeah.
but they were at least still selling millions of albums. And then comes
Van Halen 3.
right.
The title alone just smacks you in the face because you're like, what is this? And
It's the third lineup. That's why they're calling it Van Halen.
And you find out that it was Van Halen, Van Hagar, and now Ex Halen.
Yeah,
as the disgusted sigh that you got when you found out Gary Sharon was
from Extreme.
So you just went,
yeah. So well, he's from Extreme, so they called it Ex Halen. But
Ex Halen.
And the thing was, they were actually originally there was this cat named Mitch Malloy. I don't know if it would have been any better, probably not. Who was
I'm Mitch Malloy.
Yeah, I used to be in Van Halen for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. He was a solid, rock and roll singer. Looked a lot like David Lee Roth, and they were basically, I think they recorded a track with him. They were about to bring him on. Yeah, if you look on YouTube, I think there's a track with him. They're about to bring him on, and then they do the reunion with David Lee Roth at the awards show.
Greatest hit stuff.
And he was like, they didn't tell Mitch about that. And he was like, I don't know. And they didn't tell Dave about Mitch. Dave thought he was getting back in the band.
Yeah.
And then
they really should have done that.
Their manager at the time also managed Extreme. So behind the scenes, he's trying to shoehorn Gary Sharon into this. Uh-huh. And he ended up getting his way.
And it's just, I to this day, I've never heard, no, I take that back. I've heard the very last song on this album. Eddie is the vocalist on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so syrupy, I couldn't even finish it. And I wanted to hear it because Eddie was singing.
Right.
Awful. What in the hell?
I first checked out this album and it was probably like 2008, maybe. I was working. I was at work. It's a slow day. I was listening to music and I was like, I'm going to give this album a chance. And it was on, I either found it on YouTube or it was on some streaming service. I forget. And I put it on and I got through it. And I the next day I couldn't remember any of the songs. And getting through it was like when you listen to Van Halen, your body fills up with electricity and energy. Your foot, your fucking foot's tapping. You're singing along. You fucking just you get a jolt of energy.
Those first 6 albums are over before you know it, and you're like, we gotta play that again.
I gotta listen to some solo David Lee Roth shit now. You got to keep going.
Yeah.
But this album drains your energy. You're tired. These meandering, lumbering, syrupy songs, and
it probably doesn't even sound like Van Halen. Like you're like,
it's got a little more guitar than Van Hagar, but it's what Dave did, and they were a jam band. I'm sure they were much better than Van Halen 3 when they were a backyard jam band doing 20-minute versions of Cream songs. Yeah. They were still better than this, but what Dave did when he joined the band is say, hey man, we got to make these songs danceable. Every song's got to be danceable because we want more chicks at the gigs.
Yeah, well, they got to be toe tapping, but there was also some raw there. Like My Love Is Rotten to the Core. I know. Talking about love.
That's not in opposition to what I'm saying.
Yeah,
saying, these songs saying something rocks and it's got to be danceable. It's kind of the same thing. But what he's saying, we need some rhythm, we need some fucking energy, we need to stay focused.
This is just garbage.
This doesn't have rhythm, energy, or focus. It's just, it's just.
Well, and case in point, Alex puts this book out called Brothers, and he praises his brother. He talks solely about the David Lee Roth years. He talks about how that was the band. The bullshit they did after was not the band.
Now,
I get what he's saying.
To put some context on it, he's not getting along with Sammy right now, And he did mention in one interview the Sammy stuff is for another book. So he might be I'll make some more money off another book. And plus
I'll read that too.
I'm pissed at Sammy right now, and I don't want to fucking give him any attention. But anyways, he did say, which you and I both agree with, this was the band, right?
Yeah.
And it was. The one positive note from this era, if you go on YouTube and you look up some of the live shows, when Sammy was in the band, because he's a dick, he basically said, I will, in any given Van Halen concert, I will sing 3 Dave songs and that's it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was his policy. So you had Jump, Panama, and then one other random Dave era song that they would throw in there, and then the rest was Pablum from the fucking Van Hagar albums.
Right now.
And then some Sammy solo stuff like I Can't Drive 55. And so
that's wrong. That's not that they should have never touched that shit.
Yeah. And then so they're rehearsing for the tour with Gary Cherone, and Ed's like, so what three songs from the previous albums you want to do? And Gary's like, huh? He goes, what 3 songs that aren't on Van Halen 3 do you want to do? And Gary's like, dude, I'll sing whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
And then fucking Ed and Alex look at each other and fucking hell. And they loaded up the set with Dave era stuff. They're doing great. Fucking Mean Street and Ain't Talking About Love. And
see, and I could totally dig that, because I will say Gary Cherone can imitate. He did some Freddie Mercury tribute thing, and he's
got a good voice. He's just,
but you're only as good as the band you're in. Like, people want to talk about Nuno Bettencourt. Whatever, dude. You're in a shit band. Who cares?
And the thing is,
fuck off.
Exactly. And the thing is, Dave didn't have Gary Cherone's quality of voice, but he had better taste. He brought the fucking songwriting chops to Van Halen. He really did. His lyrics were amazing. And so you go on YouTube and you look up those shows, and Gary Cherone is just rocking those Dave era songs. He really fucking kicks ass. He couldn't write one of those to save his life, but he could sure as hell sing them. And that
goes back to when I was saying is if you can't sing and if you just fake it till you make it, you get out there and say, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
There's something about that.
That's like when Iggy Pop, he said he wasn't sure if he was going to be a singer, and then he heard Bob Dylan and Alice Cooper, and he's like, well, they're singing. He's like, let's fucking sing. So all right. So last but not least, we've got one of Silky's all-time favorite albums. This is the band that you have, if you look at bands you love as your children, this is Silky's most troubled child and his favorite child as well.
I want to ask, has anyone ever tried to just eat a bran muffin
with glass in it? With shards of glass in it,
but with no liquid anywhere around. Just dry, and suffer through this goddamn thing.
Oh my God! So the band that I've known Silky for decades, and the band that I've seen torture him the most, and also bring him the most joy at the same time, is Metallica.
Mm-hmm.
And it all started with Load and Reload in that whole era where they're being fake and trying to be something they're not, and that killed this cat here. It just killed him, and it brought pain to my heart just seeing him suffer. I didn't really care, but seeing him suffer, I was like, oh man, I'm sorry for you, dude. And then they come back. They do Death Magnetic and Hardwired to Self-Destruct, and just come back full force, and we're like, oh my God, Metallica is Saint Anger, that killed Silky.
That was rough.
Torture. They come back, and they're back on the attack with these post-Death Magnetic stuff, and Silky's thrilled. I'm getting back into them. I wrote them off when the Black album came along. I'm starting to get back into them. And then they drop.
Well, so they played the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
and,
tell the story, the background.
They did like a collaboration with Ray Davies from the Kinks, and they were just having such a good time. Ray Davies tapped them to actually sing. I'm trying to remember. It was "You Really Got Me" and
All Day and All the Night.
All Day and All the Night, I believe. And then Ray Davies put out an actual solo album called "Me and My Friends" or something like that. And Metallica.
Oh, they play on that?
Yeah, they play
That's
one
awesome.
or two songs on that.
That's great.
And you can still track that down. But in the midst of all that, I want to say they strike up a conversation with Lou Reed.
You know where I think that started was it their 30th anniversary where they had all the guests where
Lulu
Dave
had
must
come
Dave,
out though
when they
did that.
When Dave Mustaine came back and they had the series of concerts with all
because
the
they threatened to play the entire Lulu thing.
Oh, okay. Because I know Lou Reed was at that. I wasn't sure if that's where they met him because they did White Light, White Heat and all that. Okay, you tell the story. You know this band better than I do. I'll shut up.
So that was like 2011. So you hear that they're going to collaborate, and I remember going, "Wow, this could be either really good because Lou Reed can be really good, or
Velvet Underground stuff is amazing. Yeah, New York, that solo album, New York is amazing.
Some of Lou Reed's solo stuff is just
nonsense.
Very abstract.
Yeah.
And that's a nice word for I don't like this.
Right. Yeah, he can get kind of meandering and pretentious at times for sure.
Yeah. So they put this out, and man, I'm like first at the door buying this thing.
Oh, we have to mention he co-wrote some of the songs on The Elder.
Lou Reed.
Yeah, he did the lyrics for Dark Light and some of the other stuff. They brought him in to smarten up Kiss.
Yeah. So now we know that.
Right.
And then so Lulu comes out, and you can buy Lulu with a coffee table book.
Oh boy.
You can buy, and I don't know what's in this, but it looks like a tube, like a poster.
Right.
And it has the CD in it, and then the same cover of that mannequin that looks like Lars Ulrich on the front.
Right.
That as a post, just so bizarre. And here's this album that, Rabid Mike loves this record.
Really?
Yeah. Now this thing is, I don't.
I've tried to get through this so many times, including today, earlier today. And it's
the album's been out for 15 years now.
Yeah.
14 years. And I think I've listened to it 3 times.
It's basically
like start to finish. Like I'm just gonna listen to this out, and it's awful. It's fucking awful.
The lyrics are supposedly based on some German expressionist plays, and I've heard that the guys in Metallica said when they were recording it, Lou Reed was like, "All right, man, come up with some music for these lyrics," and he'd have these just meandering surrealist lyrics. Based on some obscure German expressionist plays that he liked. And it's basically just him mumbling nonsense.
Yeah, and they're not even, they're just playing behind him.
Yeah,
they're doing what you should do as a support band.
Yeah.
We're going to just play behind him. Nobody wanted to come out with a riff and a lead and take over.
Yeah, and he basically said, come up with some music for this. So they would come up with some kind of basic chord progression and some riffs, and the way Metallica is used to working is, okay, well that's a good start. Let's move this here. Let's work on this all day, and at the end of the day, maybe we'll have a song. But when they're working with Lou, they'd come up with some basic riffs and a chord progression. And he'd be like, "That's great, let's record it." They'd do one take, and he'd say, "That's great, let's move on." And you can tell it's Metallica noodling and Lou Reed mumbling. It should have been called Noodling and Mumbling.
It sounds like a demo album.
A bad demo album.
Yeah. It's you've got an
Saint Anger. Saint Anger sounds like a demo album. This sounds
Saint Anger that's another one.
I know, but it's better than this. It's got fully formed song ideas.
Yeah, I've at least listened to Saint Anger more than 3 times. I literally have only played this start to finish 3 times.
Yeah,
15 years.
I've never gotten all the way through it. I've tried a few times, and
that 18-minute song where they're saying "Ice Honey" over and over again is ridiculous.
And Lou is singing lyrics like "I am the table," and
James. Right out of that's the first song, I think. Where I am the table, and I'm like, what?
Yeah,
what? You're what?
There's one where it's like, oh, I beseech you, Jack. I beseech you. And what are you fucking talking about? It's not even.
It's as if they're playing a bunch and he's just spouting nonsense.
Yeah, it's like when last time I went to see Bad Brains and fucking the band is playing these songs that I recognize, and HR is stoned and just mumbling. This is exactly what that sounded like. It sounds like Lou Reed is stoned and mumbling nonsense because he's so stoned he can't put together a coherent sentence.
Right.
And they're noodling around in the background behind that.
And my rationale for disliking that so much is if you know someone, just a friend, someone and they're suddenly so out of character doing something that you're like, what the hell is going on? That's why you react so negatively,
Yeah.
So I cannot. That is like a true horrible album.
So they were threatening to play this entire album at that anniversary.
Yeah,
that's hilarious
because they're bringing somebody on that is not quite Metallica.
Ron McGovney.
They're bringing somebody, and Lars like, you guys better clap, or we're gonna do the entire Lulu out. Something. It was hilarious. I was like, that's fucking great.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, Lou, his feelings were really hurt that everybody hated this album. The band still defends this album to this day. It's not like The Elder where Gene and Paul like a year later are going, that was a brain fart. To this day, the cats in Metallica will defend this album.
And the thing with
great
Metallica,
piece of art.
The thing with Metallica, they stand by Lulu, and that's fine. I call it a Lou Reed record.
Yeah,
I own it. I won't get rid of it. But
on the cover, it says Lou Reed and Metallica.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to play it anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And then their Injustice for All, where the bass is basically non-existent.
Yeah.
They had their chance when they remastered these albums to bring up the bass. Why not?
Lars,
but they were like, well, that's how we sounded then, and we're going to leave it.
Lars is a stubborn bastard, and he never admits that he's wrong. He won't admit that he was wrong suing Napster. I mean, none of this shit. He never admits he's wrong. He'll stand by fucking Load and Reload to this day. And it was obvious.
Suing Napster, I mean, that became a thing, and now music is forever. These artists don't make any money now.
I know, but him suing Napster didn't do shit except piss off a bunch of fans, and everybody else could see that. This is the way it's going.
Lars was right, though. I don't
know. It didn't bring records back. Didn't do anything.
No, it didn't.
It pissed off a lot of people.
it was a sign of the times. Like, look, it's just not.
You got all these people out there working their asses off, slaving away, just barely making enough money. Hey, I can download some free music on Saturday. Meanwhile, you got this millionaires like, I don't want you from my yacht. I'm going to be calling my lawyer to make sure you can't download free music on Saturday when you have your one day off from work.
Mm-hmm. And
fuck Lars Ulrich, man. That's
he was trying to speak for the artists.
Whatever.
But you know, it's definitely, there's two sides to that.
Yeah, I think it was a tone
you try to go see Metallica now, and tickets are $400.
Of course, yeah. I just think it was a tone deaf thing.
You know,
so
I think it was a knee jerk reaction that was not well thought out, because
it
brought them a massive backlash.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, so there you have it. Those are the main albums we wanted to profile, probably the ones we thought were the strongest examples. There are some honorable mentions. Why don't you drop a few extras that you think?
When you read that article, they'll Madonna made a bad album in 80 whatever, or Genesis or something, and I'm going through and I'm like, well, I don't like any of these people's albums anyway. So not really a big stab in the chest that Madonna made a album that sounded a little different from the last one.
They were all bad.
Who gives a damn, you know?
Yeah.
But the few like Saint Anger, Metallica, bizarrely, not many bands have been able to recover. You make 5 or 6, a whole decade, their 90s output.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Is fucking awful. And we're talking 4 or 5 albums in a row where they'd lost their identity. They didn't know where the fuck they were going.
I'll be a little bit of a contrarian here and say, because I've listened to the Black Album, Load, Reload, and Saint Anger once in my life. And it was a few years back. I was like, because I heard Nothing Else Matters, and I was like, oh, they're going pop. I'm done. I didn't buy the Black Album. I was done.
Mm-hmm.
And a few years ago, I was like, I'm going to marathon all of those 4 Metallica albums that I just have been avoiding. And by the time I got to Saint Anger, it sounded good compared to the last 3, because the last 3, they're really just trying not to be Metallica. Metallica's not cool anymore. Yeah. We want to be a standard average rock band. We'll do our Southern rock song. We'll do our ballad.
Yeah.
And you get back to Saint Anger, and it's like this garage band with a lot of energy. Now, it's not a fully formed album, no guitar solos. The production is raw, but it's like this amped up garage band with a lot of energy. And I was like, oh, they're making their way. They're not home yet, but they're
showing life again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So in that context, I liked it the one time I heard it, but I get it.
I mean,
it's not a Metallica.
Album, the Black Album is a nice stepping on point for someone who just has no idea where to start with that band. Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning.
I'll tell you where to start. Start with Master of Puppets. That's where you start.
That's what
I would say. If you listen to the Black Album, you won't know what band you're listening to. You'll have no idea what they're about.
Somebody pointed out is you're always going to have somebody check out the Black Album and then go, man, I want to hear their first few, and they get it that way. Which
the reason
as long as somebody eventually buys Master of Puppets, I'm fine with the Black Album being their first.
And the only reason they'll check it out is because it was on the radio the most.
Right. But for a band to put out, the Black Album, Load has some decent songs on it.
Sure, they all have 1 or 2 decent songs.
I can't stand Reload. Reload is just terrible. There's stuff on there.
This is pretentious. Let's do an album with cum and blood on the album cover.
Yeah.
And
they wanted to be. Now I will say, the Black Album is my favorite U2 record.
There you go. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
but no, when we talk about bad albums, though, Saint Anger does not have 1 guitar solo. It's everything that Kirk Hammett said in Some Kind of Monster, where if we don't put, we're a heavy metal band, and if we don't have guitar solos, this album is going to sound dated. And the proof is in the pudding. Go see Metallica. You're never going to hear them trot out more than one song from that record.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It's definitely subpar. And then you mentioned Unmasked, definitely as a honorable mention.
Yeah, Unmasked. It's a Kiss record after Dynasty, and it's its own genre. It's like where does this fall in? Like Kiss managed to invent a genre that no one has ever even.
I think it's their attempt at power pop, basically.
Yeah, so it's power.
They're trying to be the Jam or something. I don't know.
Oh, it's just I hate that record.
It's their Todd Rundgren album.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I for some reason I love the cover, the comic booky thing, but just the Ace has some good stuff. Talk to Me, Naked City's good, Two Sides of the Coin.
Yeah, but Naked City is Gene.
Gene, yeah.
Talk to Me.
I dig that song.
Talk to Me and Torpedo Girl. They're all right, but they're still not Shock Me. They're not. It's not 2000 Man. It's not Hard Times. Hard Times is a killer fucking song.
And just it's depressing to go, man. 1980 Unmasked. What a garbage record.
and the only reason they called it Unmasked is because they thought it would sell albums. Because they thought people, maybe if I open the album, we'll see that. Because there was a whole rumor they're going to be unmasked if you open the album.
Yeah, I got the album and thought that, I did the same thing. But 1980 is just a very depressing year because John Bonham's dead, Bon Scott's dead, and here your band, one of your bands that was always there for you coming up, is fucking unmasked. It's fucking horrible.
Yeah, and all these synth bands are starting to bubble up. It's just fucking dark ages.
Dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. Black Sabbath's.
Oh God, we should have had some
Forbidden.
of those. Yeah, we should have had one of those albums on there.
Black Sabbath, Forbidden.
Yeah.
They were Ice-T's gonna produce this record and get you guys a whole new audience.
Yeah, you're gonna get the gangster rap crowd.
Yeah, and it's gonna be fucking amazing. Tony's just snorting all the blow he can. He's like, yeah, that'd be great. Ice-T. We're gonna hang with Ice-T. You're Black Sabbath. What the fuck? And
nothing against Ice-T. His shit is great, but
it's not. It's so
it's like
it was all based on body count having such a
I know, the body count thing,
a presence at the time, and Ice-T doesn't even produce it. Ernie C does, his guitar player, and it's not Black Sabbath, and they got some rap shit in there, and it's just
there's
all your sab heads are like, this is the worst fucking.
There's two schools of thought on the Reddit Black Sabbath subreddit forum. There's the Ozzy and Dio only crowd, with a soft spot probably for Ian Gillan.
That's me. That's where I fall right there.
And then there's the it's all Black Sabbath crowd.
Yeah. Oh my God.
You're being territorial. It's
and
like
that
guy,
it's not
fucking Black Sabbath.
That guy right there lives in his mother's basement.
Absolutely. It's like the people I used to see on Twitter when I followed Kiss fan accounts were like, oh, fucking Tommy is the spaceman. It's all about a movement, man. It's more than just one person. It's a movement. I'm like, I remember I literally replied to somebody, move out of your mother's basement.
Yeah. Yeah. So to wrap it up, I made a playlist called What the Hell Happened? I Am the Table.
Yes.
And it profiles a lot of the every album that we've talked about.
Plus more.
Yeah, I added the Velvet Underground Squeeze album. That basically
which was led by world famous Velvet Underground frontman Doug Yule,
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with
No.
Velvet Underground.
And then Brothers of the Road, the Allman Brothers, are really just lost.
Is that the one where they had the guitar player, the guy with the playing the keyboard that was strapped on like a guitar in the early 80s?
Now this is them in 1980, and again, just
might have been when they had the guitar player.
Maybe. It's awful.
Yeah.
And then Willie Nelson's reggae record. It's called Countryman. You have to check that out.
Excuse me, yeah.
And then Danzig, Elvis. Danzig sings Elvis, and this album is like your drunk uncle does a record.
It's hard for me to fathom the brilliance of those classic Misfits albums.
Yeah.
And reconcile that with some of the shit Glenn Danzig has done on his own.
Yeah.
You know, he did that movie he directed. I forget what it was called.
Vampirotica
or Verotica. Like it's called Verotica. And it's worth watching because it's so fucking funny. It's Ed Wood bad. Yeah. And there's two reasons to watch it. There's tits, and the other reason is it's Ed Wood bad. There's literally a dead person who's still breathing in that movie.
Oh.
Like laying up, trying to look dead and still breathing. It's like really fucking bad. It's hilarious.
But I added Bob Dylan's "Down in the Groove," which is just a terrible record.
Is that Born Again Christian?
No, this is like 87, 88, maybe 89.
Synthesizers and shit.
Yeah, it's just bad. And then David Bowie's what was that one called? Never Let Me Down, that record. That's one David Bowie regrets having done. And then I wrapped it up with Alice Cooper's Dada. 1983, I think.
That was at the height of his cocaine addiction.
Yeah. That was just me thinking of some of the bands that really disappointed me. New album comes out and you're just like, oh man, and you're like, what?
That was the Dada era is when Alice Cooper was sporting his new Kabuki girl look.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you look up that era, instead of the classic Alice Cooper look, he's done up like a Japanese Kabuki girl. That's
Jesus. Well, the good thing is,
look, I guess, I don't know.
Some of these bands, they will veer off, fall off a cliff and go, okay, I'm okay. And then they come back and do a real album.
Yeah.
And Alice Cooper never looked back. He got the metal.
Well, he got sober first, so he wasn't.
And then he got those two ripped up muscle dudes.
I think it was just one guy, named Kane Roberts or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that tour. That was pretty good. But he's gone back to being Alice Cooper. It'll never be as good as the Alice Cooper group because you don't have the songwriting. But he's Alice Cooper again.
Yeah,
and a lot of that for him was stop being drunk all the time, stop flying on cocaine all the time. Some people can handle it, some people can't. He figured he couldn't, and he's back on track. But there's a lot of cringeworthy shit out there.
A great way to end it on Alice Cooper. We got a great show next week. Anything else?
No, just go listen to that playlist if you want to torture. If you feeling masochistic, like you want to cut yourself with glass so you don't feel the emotional pain anymore. Instead, just listen to that playlist and feel the cringe pain.
I will say some of these records, they're awful, but they're soft spot in your heart because you like the band so much.
Yeah.
And that's fine too, but we're telling you exactly what you need to hear, that these are bad records.
Yeah, and if you want some laughs, listen to The Elder and Standing in the Spotlight by D.D. King. Those have got some laugh-worthy moments. So. Yeah. All right. Peace out, motherfuckers.
Deuces.